Hello and welcome to the Inside Elland Road Podcast. I'm Chris O'Connor and I'm joined by Graham Smith. Graham, you're fresh from the presser, is that right?
That's right. I've just come straight down the motorway at the speed limit all the way just to get back in time to speak to you. Can't wait.
70 miles an hour top, so just to double check. So what's the latest then? Team news. Gray and there was some Harry Gray news, but James and Nonto are probably two of the names we're looking for some updates on.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of news actually. James, Gnonto, Perry, Gray, Okafor as well. It's funny, we were talking before the press conference amongst ourselves, and one of my peers had written a piece this week with Jack Harrison's personal trainer, his private coach that he'd been working with in Marbella. And for my newsletter this week, I interviewed Noah Okafor's speed coach, ex three-time Swiss national sprint champion. And the piece is, about how it's all about making him healthier. He's had a massive physical transformation over the last 8 months. He's put on a load of muscle. He's got a lot leaner. And the idea of it is to make him available a lot more, make him healthier, and then make him quicker. And we were saying, we were joking about how you put these pieces out and then the thing you're absolutely dreading is then the news that player that you've written about is injured. And lo and behold, Okafor struggling with his adductors. Now, I think we can let the speed coach off on that one because he didn't work with him during the international break. I think Okafor might have gone to Dubai. I'm not sure. So maybe he's done it climbing the steps into a private jet. Who knows? But he is one of the wingers who is a doubt for this weekend, or at least there's a question mark over him. Dan James, though, the news is good. So back when it happened, we were told by our sources inside and outside the club that they were really hopeful of 6 weeks and a conservative treatment plan, no surgery. He's already back and played parts in team training. He's not in contention to start, but he is in contention to come off the bench. So we may well see Dan James among the substitutes, which is very good news, particularly with Okafor potentially struggling, and particularly when Willie Gnonto's calf problem has cleared up, but he had to have a minor hernia operation and won't be back in team training until next week. So he'll have Harrison, he'll have James for the bench, he'll have Aronson, he'll have Okafor maybe. So there's mixed news, good news and bad. On the goalkeeping front, Lucas Perry's back in team training, but he's not yet at 100%, and Daniel Farke is not minded to rush him straight back in. And he kind of made an interesting point, which was he hasn't had his kind of main defenders around him in team training for the last couple of weeks. They've been away, or some of them have been away with their international teams, so he hasn't really got the chance to settle back in properly yet. And also with Darlow's performances, maybe there's not so much of a rush. And Gray, he's back in team training next week. He's still got a bit of a thing with his hip flexor. And I think that was all the team news.
Just on Gray, there was some rumours going around today that his profile picture had changed to I think I don't have Instagram, but I think it's like a black circle, which is usually what players do when they're about to move. And then, as you know, that kind of started a bit of a wildfire. And it wasn't long before I got messages about it. But you have good news on that front.
Well, I did a bit of digging. News. Yeah, positive news. I think you could qualify it as. So I did a bit of digging this morning, again inside and outside the club, and there was a little bit of kind of surprise at the amount of panic there was out there. I mean, the first thing I guess I would say as the parent of a 17-year-old is you cannot let your peace be disrupted by the social media activity of a teenager. You have to rise above that often. But the club's position was it's a case of when, not if, he signs a new deal. His camp's position was we expect it to get done in the next couple of weeks. So I think a lot of people maybe thought, oh, this has to be done really on his birthday, and it will be done for his birthday and announced shortly after. There are myriad reasons why that might not be the case. The player himself and his camp might be wanting to listen to all the offers on the table before making a decision. Maybe his injury played a part in that. Maybe there simply was no rush on behalf of either parties and they just wanted to nail down the finer details. But it sounds like they're progressing towards where we want them all to be, really. And so, yeah, Leeds don't seem to be worrying. his camp don't seem to be giving any cause for worry. And I think, I don't know what you think, but is there a better option for him in terms of getting the chance to be on a Premier League pitch? Is there a better option than Leeds United? I mean, if you go to Manchester City or Spurs, you're one in a cast of many. You're not quite the special one anymore, and you're probably further away from match action than you would be at Leeds. If you go to a club where they might be able to promise a bit more game time than Leeds in the Premier League, the chances are that that's going to be a team that's in and around Leeds, maybe even below Leeds, and it's not Leeds, which is his club at the end of the day.
That's the key thing for me. I know you're probably more of a realist, but if you're from Leeds and you're a Leeds fan, and now they're in the Premier League, and you've got a chance to put on the shirt and play up front for them, that's it, right? That has got to be it in terms of dreams. Now, look, I'm realistic enough to know that there's probably like 6 to 8 clubs in the world where if they come in for you, pretty much anyone would be like, okay, fair enough. Leeds aren't at that level yet, I would say, in my kind of hopeful romantic way. But yeah, if I was advising him, I'd be saying, you're in a really good position here. If you can stay fit and maybe towards the end of the season start getting some minutes or being in the matchday squad more often. And I did see something on Twitter, again, just a caveat, I don't know what's real on there, but someone had screenshotted a reply that he'd put saying that his profile picture had been reported, which is why it went to black. So it wasn't anything that he was doing. What his profile picture was, I don't know. But so it seems like there is nothing to see there. But as is the way, panic kind of sets in quite quickly amongst the fan base. But that all seems quite positive news in terms of long term, but short term that does worry me a little bit. So it seems like everyone's pretty much in the mix now in terms of fitness, although Nonto won't play a part this weekend because of the hernia, but could be back for West Ham.
Yeah, he'll probably be back in team training before West Ham, but you've got to think he's not going to start because he's been out for so long now. And Daniel Farke does not tend to put people straight back in unless their name is Ethan Ampadu. So I think you're right on Harry Gray. I think there are a handful of clubs that if they came in now, you'd think it'd be very, very difficult to turn down. But like I said, are you going to play there? Are you going to play for Real Madrid, Barcelona, Glasgow Rangers? The likelihood is maybe not. So I think Leeds are very much in the box seat with this. But you're always nervous about a young player because, as we saw with Finlay Coleman, they can move and you're left with compensation or a deal that you agree with that club if you can reach a number on it. Until you got them on a pro deal, you are kind of in the wind a little bit. So there will still be a little bit of nerves in the air, I think, until such a time as they announce it. But there doesn't seem to be any concern right now.
Yeah, look, I think you'd get a game for Glasgow Rangers, Graham. So
I think I'm probably going to have to rule myself out of the managerial race at this rate because it's just what everyone else is doing. I'm wondering if we're almost at the point where the 49ers might say to Daniel Farke, look, could you take a little bit more responsibility? When there's a Rangers game that doesn't clash, could you maybe come up and help out? Let's hope they get that sorted nice and quickly, that one.
Yeah, so bringing it back to Burnley then, even though, like I said, there's a kind of good long-term outlook, short-term, that does worry me a little bit. In such a big game, you're probably relying on, it will almost certainly be Harrison on the left, I guess, and Aronson on the right. Which, look, I don't want to be down on them. I think both of them have actually performed really well this season. But, I mean, in terms of, if you're looking at depth, there's an injured Dan James on the bench who can come off. We're not going to see your experiment of Bogle on the right and James Justin at right back, I'm almost certain. So, yeah, it looks like it's down to those two, left and right, in what is a huge game. It is, and I know we talked about this being, well, if you don't beat Burnley, who you're going to beat. But I was looking at their results, and they are on 4 points, but their home form is quite good. They drew with Nottingham Forest, they beat Sunderland, and then Liverpool took to the 95th minute against 10 men Burnley to actually beat them. So those are 3 very good performances in their 3 home games so far. So I'm not expecting a walkover. It's probably going to be tough. It's going to be attritional, game a few chances. But it does feel like it is a huge opportunity to put a marker down and get a 7-point gap on a rival at a very early stage in the season. It's one of those games that it sounds weird saying it because it's Burnley away, and that just doesn't sound like a sexy fixture. But I've been really excited to it these past 2 weeks. It just feels like this huge kind of game, almost like a kind of, I'm getting hyperbolic, but like there's a bit of like a final feel. I've had this buzz like, oh, I can't wait for Burnley away. It's almost there, like counting down the days.
Yeah, I think I'm still scarred by last season's trip to Turf Moor, because that was truly one of the worst games I think I've ever covered. And we were talking about that in the press room today, and somebody was making the point that they still couldn't believe that Burnley didn't go for it in that game. What an opportunity that was for them to put a bit of a dent in Leeds, and they played for a clean sheet and played for a draw. And I know that was very much what football terrorist Scott Parker was all about at times last season. My appeals for him to be tried at The Hague for what we saw in that game went unheard. Nobody got back to me on that. I really hope that it's a much, much better fixture this time around, because it needs to be. But I am looking forward to it too, because like you, I see this as a really big game. I think the atmosphere will be really, really good. Leeds fans travel really well. Burnley fans will be well up for it. There will be a little bit of urgency and tension in the air because everyone knows, they're both newly promoted. They're fighting for one of those few, one of those handful of spots above the relegation zone that are realistic. And Burnley are already, half a step behind Leeds. So there is a bit of an urgency. I wouldn't be surprised if Burnley felt the urgency maybe a little bit more than Leeds. They are at home. The expectation and the pressure should be on them slightly more, I think. But it has to be better than last season, doesn't it? Has to be.
I think it's almost impossible for it not to be better than last season, right? Like that was just, it was appalling, wasn't it? It was such a bad watch. And look, so just to close the kind of team news then, there are basically no surprises we're expecting. It's going to be Harrison on the left. Darlow will start because he's not going to bring Perry back in. The team basically picks itself.
I don't know, because Okafor is a question mark, but he's not been ruled out. Not as. I mean, I'd have to go back and listen, but I don't remember Farke definitively ruling him out. So I wouldn't rule out Okafor playing on the left, but again, could be Harrison. At centre back, I was thinking about this in the car on the way back down the road. Biol,
yeah.
Biol was involved in 2 back-to-back clean sheets, international football. If he's been training really well, you wonder if this is his moment. But again, he's not been with Leeds for the international break. He's been away playing for his country. Does Farke think now is not the time to upset the apple cart? I don't know. I really can't call it. I find it very, very difficult to predict that one, because I think that Pascal has had, I don't know if a wobble is harsh. It maybe is a little bit harsh, but I think his performance has dipped slightly in certain moments. Only slightly and only in certain moments. And I wonder if that's enough, like we discussed on the last podcast. So we'll wait and see on that one. But Darlow in net, because whilst Perry is back and has trained, not at full strength, not at full fitness yet, needs to get into his rhythm a little bit more, needs to train with the centre backs a little bit more and the defensive midfielders and get back into his way. But I think we should give credit to Karl Darlow for what he's done by stepping in the Premier League. 4 years was it since his last Premier League appearance, and he's been really solid. He hasn't made. There's been no gaffes or ricks. There's been no Melier moments like we had last season, and he's made it so that Farke feels he doesn't have to rush his number one choice back into action, and that's huge credit to Karl Darlow. And I think playing for Wales has probably helped Darlow's case as well over the last period. That he's been getting game time in big games, even when he wasn't getting games at Leeds, and now he's come into this little bit of this run of games. It's probably done him the world of good, confidence-wise, morale-wise, and he's having a bit of a moment. So credit to him.
Yeah, massively. And it's kind of interesting how quickly it changes from being kind of nervous that Darlow's going to play in the Premier League just because we haven't seen it for so long, to it just being like, oh yeah, Darlow will be fine if Perry's not fit. Like that's happened in a matter of weeks. So yeah, he does deserve a lot of credit. And look, yeah, you're right. We did talk about Struijk being replaced by BO, and I was thinking on reflection, I thought, am I being harsh on Struijk? Because the deflected goals, I know you could say you could probably do more, but equally they were both quite unlucky. So I was umming and ahhing about whether I was being a bit harsh on him there, but that would be the change. Personally, and I don't think this change will happen, but I still think Tanaka was excellent in that Everton game, and I still think he potentially could step in for maybe Stack or some people have mentioned Longstaff, but I really like Longstaff. I think Longstaff and Ampadu play every game for me if they're fit. So it would be Stack or Tanaka I would probably be alternating between. But he's been playing for Japan midweek, and he actually came off the bench in a victory against Brazil. So he probably would be, I guess, not as fit. So yeah, I expect
it's the travel
at some point. Yeah,
it's the travel time, isn't it? That he's had, and the late arrival back at Thorpe Arch that makes me think it would probably be Stack again. And I don't really have so much of a problem with that. Leeds are the away team. I don't know if you want to go too defensive, because then maybe we'll just have two teams camped in their own half and the ball somewhere in the middle and nobody really going for it. Yeah, Farke's got options though. It's not like we shouldn't paint it as the team entirely picks itself, but I think most of the team picks itself, doesn't it?
Yeah. And yeah, just on the defensive thing, I think Tanaka against Everton kind of proved, because they have a physical midfield three, and I thought he was possibly the pick of Leeds' players, maybe Ampadu. And I would maybe say, and although I know in the Wolves game, Stack obviously played very well, but that Tanaka performance was up there with what Stack's produced in his games at least. But yeah, that's just my preference. I really like Tanaka as a footballer, and I felt like he could make the step up, which I think a few people questioned. And we haven't seen enough yet to give a definitive answer. Cool. Do you want to do a quick internationals roundup? Obviously, England beat Leeds. Rodon scored again, then conceded 4, so kind of a good news and bad news. But it's interesting how much of a threat he seems to have been in the past few weeks out of kind of nowhere.
Yeah, it is funny. And Farke talked about it today, and he was asked about Joe Rodon, and he said, and it sounded like he was joking, but then he followed it up with, I'm not even joking, that one of his greatest achievements is making Joe Rodon a threat from attacking set pieces, because when he arrived, he was a player who was very, very strong in the air defensively, and he makes first contact so many times in his own box and defending aerial balls. He makes first contact and gets into position to head the ball at goal so many times in the opposition box, but he was just a complete 50p head, and the ball would go here, there, and everywhere. It was almost like he was a tremendous defensive asset for the opposition when he got his head on a corner. Should have had more goals last season, definitely. Scored 1, didn't he? Who did he score against? Did he score it?
Yes, because it was a game where he'd only scored 1 ever before that.
Was it Derby County?
Career tally.
Was it Derby County away?
I'm sure people will be screaming.
Yeah, I don't care. But yeah, it was someone like that. And yeah, scored himself a goal this season. He can't stop scoring goals now. He's off and running, and he got one at international level as well, which must have felt amazing. He's played a lot of games for Wales, a huge amount of games for Wales for a man of his age, and to get it in such a big game as well. And things didn't go their way, and he's the kind of player that will say, well, I would rather have won than scored. But at the same time, what a special minute, what a special moment for him.
How many players do you reckon say that, but then secretly are like, well, I'm actually pretty glad I got a goal in front of a roaring stadium in my home?
Back when players used to tweet, it was always, frustrated with the result, delighted to get my first goal for the club. Just wish it came in better circumstances. We go again, in that horrendous style of what used to really annoy me about that was how they tweeted it in such a way as that they instantly turned the page on that game, so that there's no more discussion on that game. We go again. we're already thinking about the next game. No, mate, we're thinking about how you lost that game and why and what you did wrong. That's what we're thinking about. And yeah, no one cares that you got your goal. No one but you cares that you got your goal in a defeat. But I think it bodes well for Leeds if he's finding the net. Because if he does make a genuine improvement when it comes to goal scoring, he's a massive threat. Against Bournemouth, he was a menace. They could not get near him in the box, and they're not blessed with tremendous height, but there are ways and means of marking, big players. I mean, Berardi used to go quite often up against the best header of the opposition because he was so good at disrupting, so good at getting off the ground and getting in the way, bringing slight air of violence to the scenario. So it is impressive to me that Rodon in the Premier League is such a threat, and one that hopefully Leeds can really utilise.
Just on the social media thing, I did see I think it was at the end of the transfer window when it closed, someone had found 2 Instagram posts from 2 players, and they were identical in terms of when I first arrived at the club, you were also good, and it was word for word the same. And this guy was like, "I finally done it. I found it." But obviously, they're managed by the same team or whatever. So yeah, it just goes to show. So it's quite refreshing when people like Stack quite clearly manage his own socials, because he's a bit kind of quirky and out there, and has his own kind of like Photoshop language. So I think fans always kind of appreciate that, but possibly makes clubs a little bit nervous.
Oh yeah, definitely. It definitely makes clubs nervous. Yeah, but Stack's not so much a liability. He's just slightly weird. He's just a bit, offbeat. He's not being controversial. I guess a player like Matthias Klick would sometimes make you nervous. When he was, I think it was after Millwall in London. It was definitely a London game, and I think it might have been Millwall when Berardi was sent off and shouldn't have been and had the red card rescinded. That Klick put an Instagram of his favourite Stevie Wonder song, and somebody made a reference to it, and he said, "No, I'm just a massive Stevie Wonder fan," which I thought was absolutely super. That's what we want from players on social media. We want a bit of character. You want a bit of controversy. Certainly I do as a journalist. So I'd like it if Stack started to take the graphic design side of things and weaponize it against opposition players, like really mocking them with his, whether it's Minecraft or Roblox or whatever other memes he's got up his sleeve. Because it's not quite my tempo. Sometimes I don't really get it, and that's probably an age thing, Chris. That's probably what that is. I'm now a very old man.
Sadly, I no longer get it either, so I don't know what that says about me. Just to round off the internationals, the other thing I made a note of is it's not Leeds United related, but the Faroe Islands back-to-back wins. I just thought that's incredible. They've got a population of about 55,000 people, which I looked up is Scarborough has more people. And I don't think Scarborough could field a competitive international football team who could compete to qualify for World Cup. No shots fired at Scarborough. Absolutely love it. Me and my wife do like visiting there, the East Coast, and that kind of whole bit. But yeah, unbelievable. They won both games. It's just kind of even the maths involved. Out of that 55,000 people, how many of them are going to be even eligible to play football? It's crazy.
Yeah, it is mad. When I was growing up, I used to wish that I'd been born in like Liechtenstein or Faroe Islands, just so that I was in with a better chance of playing international football. Because you've got to think your chances are way higher than if you're born in countries where the populace is 1 million or 1.5 million or greater. I enjoyed elements of the international break. I thought Rodon was pretty good in a poor Wales performance, first half performance, certainly against England. I thought he actually defended really quite well. Had a worrying moment in that game where he came out to his left, right out to the flank with a kind of cover in for someone else, and the ball had gone in behind, as he does for Leeds so often, and made a challenge, and then he seemed to be limping a little bit. I think that was maybe just his kind of, he always looks like he's hurt, doesn't he? He's got a natural hypochondriac facial expression to him, but he was fine. Also enjoyed Northern Ireland's performances against Slovakia in a big win, and against Farke and Stax Germany. How we didn't get a point against them is unknown to me. But that was absolutely great, really, really good, and that it made me think a lot about how teams can harness the kind of what they're good at, what they are, and who they are to make it really difficult for superior opposition. So I asked Farke about it today at the press conference about how team spirit, what can it do for Leeds United in the Premier League, and because he's absolutely massive on it, he's absolutely huge on togetherness, and so that played a big part in the recruitment this summer and the kind of players they wanted to bring in, because they did not want to upset, which was a very strong dressing room culture last season. And yeah, you can kind of rely on your leaders to enforce that and to bring new players into the culture and make sure they adhere to it. But if you brought in 5 or 6 wild cards who were very difficult to predict as human beings, then I think you'd kind of be risking quite a lot. So Leeds were really quite pleased that the players they brought in, and part of it was purposeful as well, were good lads. Like Goodmanson seems like salt of the earth. Stack seems very down to earth, other than his Instagram. Calvert-Lewin settled straight in, kind of made himself one of the group. So it does play a really big part. And the other thing that game made me think was, you can make football very difficult for very, very good technical players, even if it means putting it in the air, like Leeds have been doing increasingly this season, going longer to Calvert-Lewin. It makes life very, very hard for teams that are not physically equipped to kind of play that style of football. I think it's been really effective for Leeds so far this season.
And it's been thought through. Like, I remember Iriola said that their press was obviously causing a few problems early on. So then Leeds just used that as an option to completely bypass the threat of their press. So it wasn't like it's mindless. It's that there's a method to it. And obviously we can play it out. And that's kind of Farke's probably preferred way to keep the ball and build possession. But it's nice that we are flexible. And we talked about that last week as something that he needs to be kind of given a bit more credit for. In terms of what he kind of keeps an eye on, I was going to talk about narrative, if that's all right, Graham, because as you know, that's what I kind of deal in my day job. I teach writing and I write for theatre, radio, hoping to write for screen as well. And I like to sometimes keep an eye on what I gauge as the narrative feel of the club. And I've got like a document going years back where I kind of like save tweets, some that I just find amusing, some that are just like, but often I kind of save ones that get like loads of likes or comments that I think kind of like capture the mood. So I did a kind of like, over the summer, I've got a kind of narrative kind of, I put the summer into 3 acts, and I'll talk briefly about 3 acts as well. I'll go through this quick, but yeah, in the summer, I kind of felt like that kind of act 1, the start of the summer, it was just a lot of relief and excitement. So we're back in the Premier League. We had the huge promotion parade. We had the Kaiser Chiefs gig where Bamford came out in Temple Newsam. We had Through It All Together at the Leeds Playhouse, which obviously I was a big part in. And I think, we'd played a small part into kind of like a really feel-good summer for Leeds fans. And then I felt like Act 2 of the summer, that kind of middle period, was like where the magnitude of the task ahead was kind of dawning on us. But the early business, I think, generally was received quite well. Mecca Bio and Bornau came in. We had Longstaff, Goodmanson, Stack and Perry. They were all kind of in that early part of the middle section. And then Act 3 of the summer, which kind of took us into the start of the season as well. I put down More Needed and then Fear. So we did get Calvert-Lewin, Okafor, James Justin, but there was loads of talk, and I made some quotes about, records, points, total income in, recruitment team experience have been shown up. That seemed to be quite a commonly held view online. So I'm obviously taking this from socials. Now, if I've done the same for this season, and the 3-act structure very briefly, right? There's loads of different kind of structures you can break down, but beginning, middle, end, 3-act structure in conventional stories. Act 1 will be about 25% of your story, Act 2 about 50%, and Act 3 about 25%. So if you break a season down, Act 1 will be about 9-10 games. And if we're looking at like the kind of story model, that will be where we establish our characters, where the realistic goals for the protagonist, in this case Leeds United, are kind of are highlighted, and there'll be some turning points. In the middle, we'll have some twists, obstacles, crises, tests. The hero will learn about themselves, and we'll get an idea as to whether they have what it takes to achieve their goals. And then the last act, Act 3, final 9-10 games, we'll get the resolution. So that middle section is about 19 games if we break it down by the 25, 50, 25. So we are in Act 1 in this kind of hypothesis of the 3-act structure of our season. At Everton game, I tracked as there was a feeling of pride. Then very quickly it was disaster, squad not ready after we lost to Sheffield Wednesday and Arsenal. Then it was competitive, but we're not scoring goals, Fulham Wolves. Then I think it was our first turning point, right, where there's a question kind of asked, well, can this team score goals? And I say it's a turning point because a turning point is a moment of significant change. And it's something which can push the narrative in a new direction, and it can link to the protagonist's goals, which in our case is to stay up. So playing Wolves felt like one of those games where, right, there's been questions asked of our hero, Leeds United. Can they score goals? And we're up against a relegation rival. And we rose to the occasion there. The current fan narrative I've tracked as we're competitive, but we're not getting what we deserve. We've got a lot of pride in our performances, but there is a bit of worry that if this continues, we might be in for a long season. Which takes us to another turning point, which is the Burnley match. It's a match against a relegation rival, and it's coming towards the end of this kind of first act, which I think 9 or 10 games will basically establish what the aims are for this season. You know, the aims are to stay up, right? But if Leeds had hit the ground running and some of those games which are really close went the other way, some people might be talking about mid-table Europe. But I guess around 9-10 games, you probably know realistically what sort of mini league you're in. But it does kind of highlight that this Burnley game, I'm not just trying to big it up, but it does feel like a really seismic moment in this early section of the season.
Yeah, I have to admit I was a little bit confused there because I thought I would be the hero in this story. So it threw me a little bit when you said it was Leeds United. Scott Parker, definitely a villain, in this in this scenario. I'm sure he's a wonderful human being.
He's kind of dressed, isn't he? Like, yeah.
Yeah, you can imagine him, stroking a domestic pet, in the crook of his arm and telling you exactly how he's going to destroy the football game, giving you enough time to work out how to subvert his plans. And with Jadon, Anthony obviously as his henchman.
I expect you to die.
Exactly like that. I expect you to have an XG of 0.01. Yeah, we ran a survey during the international break, and hundreds of Leeds fans responded, and the vast majority said staying up should be the aim. But there were almost a surprising number of people who said no, the aim this season should be mid-table. There are people who have set that as their expectation, and I don't know if that's been partly informed by how competitive Leeds are, if they're just simply positive, optimistic people, if they're unrealistic, unreasonable tyrants. Like, I don't know what plays into that, but equally, what they've seen from Farke in Act 1, they like. Most people said that he was performing above expectations or at expectations, and only a tiny fraction said he was performing below expectations. So yeah, if he's kind of one of the good guys, one of the heroes, and one of the protagonists, then people are enjoying what they're seeing from him. And also, I think he's learned. I think we're seeing him evolve as this kind of Act 1 goes on, because the team selection at Arsenal, the way they played at Arsenal, I think is very, very different from what we saw against Spurs at home. The way that the team was set up, the team selection, how long they were going in the Bournemouth game and the Spurs game, and playing somebody. I was speaking to someone in the club last week, and they were talking about finding the sweet spot to play survivor ball. What the data and what the analysis says is the style that you need and the metrics you need to hit in order to stay up. And Leeds feel that they're progressing towards that pretty steadily. So I think Act 1 has been very, very compelling, and I think the narrative is is a pretty positive one, but things can change in an instant. The mood can change massively, and if the villain was to land a pretty devastating blow at Turf Moor on Saturday, then I think some minds would change because minds seem to change very, very, very quickly.
Yeah, and look, I think it's not just a completely trivial exercise trying to gauge the feel of the kind of like the narrative, because I actually think that has a real impact. And however you think players can insulate themselves, it will seep in some way. Do you know what I mean? A loved one will see, you'll get a feel and maybe mention something, or the way the fans react at the ground when a certain thing we've all been looking for, like for example, if a goalie's performed badly on crosses, and all of a sudden you can feel it in the ground, and it impacts everything. And do you get an indication, because Farkas talked about us as like an emotional fan base, but do you think he actually puts thought, and he also kind of like keeps an eye on what the kind of narrative feel of the club is?
Oh, 1,000,000%. He's so keenly aware of what's being said, and I don't know if he's got a burner account on Twitter that he's scrolling, or if he has somebody feeding back to him, or if he just hears it in and around the club, or if they're briefing him on it. I don't know exactly, but the amount of times he's been so almost spot on, bang on the money with what fans are saying about certain games, or about certain players. He knows very, very well what's being said and what the feeling and what the mood is. Now, Leeds fans are not backwards in coming forwards, so I would imagine that any interactions he has with Leeds fans, whilst they will be, I would say, predominantly positive, Leeds fans don't hold back. So they'll say things like, "Oh, you need to put Be-All in," or you need to score more goals. Yeah. You need to train set pieces. Leeds fans will say stuff like that. So he'll be made aware in various ways, but he's definitely aware. He knows exactly what the narrative is, and I think he tries to manage it. Like last season, Luton away, when they were in just that little crucial spell, and there was just some concerns, and some people were losing their minds. And Farke came out after the game and said they would definitely get promoted. He was managing the narrative. He knew what the narrative would be after that game, and he thought, no, I'm going to set the tone. I'm going to give them a headline. It was almost, the dead cat thing, stick a dead cat on the table thing that we heard about once. It's like what Allardyce did, I guess, when he came in and said that he was better than Pep and Klopp. Nobody was talking about the woeful, mentally fragile team. Everyone was talking about Allardyce, and Farke did that. So I think he's quite good at managing narratives, but you'll never change all of the minds, and you'll never please all of the people all of the time.
It's reassuring to hear that you can have a kind of holistic view of everything which goes into the success of the football club. And look, I'm a fan. I think he's done exceptionally well. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. But I think you're right. There are some people that just aren't having him, kind of, unless we are battling out for the title, there will always be question marks. And again, because I like to sometimes look back at I was looking back sometimes, I think it was last January, when it looked like Sheffield United had strengthened and Leeds had maybe let it slip. And there was a lot of talk then about they've kind of blown it. But we got 100 points and won the league. So sometimes, it's good to reflect on how we might have felt and how maybe we were wrong. And I feel like the recruitment team got a bit too unfairly attacked at the end of the window because it was quite emotive. And look, they said that there was 4, I think, positions they still wanted to fill. One of them was right winger, and even Farke himself said it would be difficult to stay up if we didn't get that position. And they did try and get one. There was Buonanotte fell through. Obviously, Harry Wilson right at the end, and they didn't get it. But that kind of in the moment reaction overshadowed what was actually still a good window. And I do think they've done a good job of making us competitive. But even now, I still see that they still get pelters, which I just think is a bit unfair.
Well, our survey results said that the majority of fans were pleased with the window, in terms of the general signings. What it also did, and this might be the first time in Leeds United history, was that it identified that there is one thing on which almost every single Leeds United fan has agreed, and that is that they need to strengthen in January. I think it was something like 97% responded to say, yes, they need to strengthen in January. And again, the vast majority of those who elaborated said it was the attack they want to see strengthened. So the recruitment team have I think done some very, very solid business, brought in some players that so far at a very early stage of the season look like they can play Premier League football, look like they're up to the standard, look like they're up to the physical level. But they've also unified the Leeds United support in leaving one bit of business left still to do. So yeah, January will be key, I think, in the minds of a lot of people. But again, results will kind of determine the narrative on that, as we go towards January. Because if Leeds are sitting pretty in 12th, I'm looking at the games between now and then, that would be an unbelievable achievement. But say they were, then I think that kind of 97% might dwindle a bit, and I think people wouldn't be quite so hot on the January window. But yeah, I don't think it's going to pan out that way, because I don't see them being quite that high up the table when we get to January.
Yeah, look, there's two things on that. One, I think you said one person out of the whole survey had marked out the goalkeeping position as what we need to strengthen in January. So shout out to you if you're listening, because that made me smile. I filled out the survey, Graham. I hope you know. I put my results in there. I think I put surviving relegation as the aim, even though I predicted us to finish better than that. The thing I would like to caveat, though, it is constantly worth reminding yourself that they have said that they have hit the PSR limit. So if we do sign someone in January, that means certainly you have to raise some funds before the end of June. So, there is a trade-off. It's not just we can sign someone in January and that's it. I think that will have to be a trade-off versus recouping some money, unless there's some sort of business negotiation or some of these kind of like selling things back to yourself. I don't know the ins and outs and how it all works and how everyone tries to get around it. But what I got from what they said is that if we were to have got Wilson, someone probably needed to be sold before the end of June. And that someone had to be an asset worth something. So that's what, Noncho, Struijk, maybe a handful of players.
Yeah, I don't know that it would be a handful of players to get a Wilson in, because you're not talking about...
as in one of a handful, I meant, yeah.
Yeah.
Many who can generate money, yeah.
Yeah, but it also can be a combination of things. It can be a commercial deal that you bring forward, or that is suddenly worth a lot more to you. Maybe it looks like you're going to be safe, and you can sell more commercial deals, advertising at Premier League rate for the following year. Place money, position money comes into it as well. Where you finish, and when you're buying a player, of course, the fee is amortized across the length of the contract. Whereas any sales you make, that's all reported, in this PSR window. So there are ways and means. Like I wouldn't see it as such a mad panic. I'd like to think and hope it wouldn't be such a mad panic. I think there'd be ways and means to do it. Hopefully without being so creative that then you bring the PSR auditors in to sniff around your business and try and find a way to dock you points or fine you or whatever. Let's see where we are, I guess, and see where we are squad wise and injury wise when we get to January, because you just never know what the situation is going to be. I mean, who would have foreseen last season both Ampadu and Gruev doing their knees within the space of a couple of days, and Joshua Giavogi coming in to play, a handful of minutes and the hype man role and the kind of the insurance role for all of last season. Wouldn't have had that on our bingo cards, would we?
Look, I talked about the narrative structure, and look, that Act 2 will throw in some crises and turning points, and I don't think there's a football club who've got better screenwriters than Leeds United. And you as a journalist, I'm sure you'd agree. A couple of other things I wanted to mention. I was at Elland Road this week for the You and Me Early Onset Dementia Conference, and I was talking about the play. There's something about going to Elland Road that just always makes me feel like a kid again, especially sometimes when there's not a match on. It's almost like a extra special. And I was just walking around with a smile on my face, and it was really lovely. And there were some really moving stories about dementia, and it was nice to talk about the play again and what we tried to do with it. And it also was nice to check in with the team who run the Corner Flag Cafe at Elland Road, because it reminds me that it's not just a game for many people. There is a community element to football clubs, and they really do matter. And they really do matter in how they kind of make people feel, and how they can connect people, how they can bring families together, how they can help loved ones who are going through tough periods, come together. And I think at the Corner Flag Cafe, they'll go through our programmes, they'll have talks, sometimes ex-players will come round, and it's really special. I've gone along myself to one of the sessions, and it's really nice to see the work they do. It's good to champion it, and it was a good event to be a part of. But there was also another announcement you wanted to make about the Outside Elland Road podcast, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So in the very, very near future, on our kind of YouTube channel, there will be a fan equivalent, I guess you could call it, of what we do, bringing fan view on whatever's gone on with Leeds United at the weekend, previewing games, talking about transfers, talking about things that supporters actually want to talk about and things that supporters are saying. It'll feature a range of guests. It'll have regular presenters, so keep an eye out for that. And also, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the YouTube channel so that your phone buzzes or goes off to let you know that we have put something on YouTube. And then you'll never, ever, ever forget to watch it, because that would feel criminal, wouldn't it? It would feel like a personal slight against you and I, were people to forget to watch or listen to the podcast. And whilst my personal worth is not tethered to numbers and metrics, I know that you are very much like that. So should we do predictions for this weekend's game?
Yes, well remembered. And I'm not going to rise to your comment. I'm going to let that go. 2-0 Leeds. I think it'll be hard fought, but I think we will. I think we've got more quality than they do. I think our midfield. I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin will be a massive handful, and if Okafor plays, I could see him scoring again. But Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I think, will answer some questions with a goal. That's what I'm saying.
It would be Okafor up against Kyle Walker, wouldn't it? Which would be interesting. I quite like the sound of that. I like the sound of that better than I like the sound of Harrison against Walker. But we'll see what we get. I'm also worried about Jadon Anthony, because if there's one thing you can almost always bet on, it's a former player coming back to haunt you, and he is having a season in terms of end product. 4 goals, 1 assist already this season. Quite remarkable. Not all screamers, but he's really enjoying himself, and which is quite nice to see, because he didn't get a great shake at Leeds in terms of opportunity. I think also it'd be fair to say that when he did get chances, he didn't quite take them. He didn't quite shine all the time, and then he went through a very, very, very difficult personal situation, which made it a really difficult season for him. What I don't want to see is him cutting inside and bending one into the far corner. You would think that Leeds will be very, very keen to stop that and keen to look out for that. Ideally, Ampadu or someone will reintroduce themselves in a very physical way with him, and hopefully Burnley will show some attacking intent. There will be a bit of a game. There will be some action. If it's 0-0 and a complete stinker again, then I don't know who else to appeal to beyond the UN. I'm looking for some higher power to take some remedial action. My prediction is going to be Burnley of Lancashire 1, Leeds United 2.
I'll take it. And we will find out very shortly. A couple of days. I look forward to discussing it, because I'm confident. I'm going in confident. We're going to do the business, and we're going to be talking about this next week after a turning point in our Act 1, taking us into the Act 2 soon. Leeds are going to win. Okay, everyone. we'll see you all next week. I hope you'll have great rest of the weeks, great weekends, and 3 points for Leeds.
Bye-bye.